Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. Today is Friday, the 7th of January 2022. These are the stories that we will be discussing during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, by the controversial proposal that has been put forward by India to redraw the electoral map of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This has caused anxiety and anger amongst the region's Muslims, who say the move is aimed at disempowering them. At the same time, we'll also be talking about the hundreds of thousands of orphans that are still in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Despite the different laws that have been put forward, India is not paying heed to them at all, and they are not being given the proper attention. Also, the spokesperson of the Foreign Office today took out a statement while talking to the media, in which he talked about the obstruction of the SARC process by India, which he said was an established fact. He also talked about the violations of the human rights of the Kashmiri people that had been documented in several dossiers by Pakistan, and he also said that the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir need to be given their due right. We'll be discussing that in our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Iranian Foreign Minister Hussain Amir Abdullahian, who said in a statement that an agreement could be reached with the P5+1 if the US sanctions were lifted in its entirety. Although there seems to be a lot of optimism as far as the JCPOA is concerned, there are a lot of question marks as well. Let's see where it all goes. The 8th round is in progress as we speak of these talks. Then we'll be talking about Kazakhstan's authoritarian leader, who has said that he has authorized security forces to fire without warning amid a violent crackdown on anti-government protests. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev said that about 20,000 bandits had attacked the main city of Almaty, the epicenter of protests. Why these protests started? Because of fuel hikes, and these have now escalated. Russia has also brought in a contingent of its troops inside on the request of Kazakhstan. Where all of this going is, this is going to be our third story. And our final story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Justice Aisha Malik, who was a judge of the Lahore High Court, and now she is going to be elevated to being a judge of the Supreme Court. The decision has been taken in favor of her by a margin of 5-4. Nevertheless, this is going to be further decided in a parliamentary committee, and once it is the approval is given, she will be part of the Supreme Court. A lot of congratulatory messages have been coming on Twitter and on the social media platforms when this decision was made, including that from Minister Shireen Mazari Sahiba. Let's begin with our first story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns delimitation of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. What is this going to bode for the people of the region, especially for the Muslims of the region? Where is India going as far as this region is concerned? More in the following report.
The denial of the right to self-determination and brutal oppression of Kashmiris in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, in clear negation of human dignity, persist unabated under draconian Indian occupation. The divisive Delimitation Commission draft proposal to raise assembly seats in occupied valley, rendering Muslims into political minority, represents another evil design of Hindu nationalist BJP regime. The disruptive proposal has already sparked huge uproar among Kashmiris, who have outrightly rejected the proposal, claiming manipulation is being done in electoral constituencies so as to favor one party. More than 2 years after the state of Jammu and Kashmir was bifurcated into 2 union territories, delimitation of occupied territories is a malicious attempt of Indian government to consolidate August 2019 settler colonial design. Redrawing electoral map of occupied valley is aimed at disenfranchising and marginalizing Kashmiri Muslims by dividing Muslim-dominated constituencies in order to put the Hindus in a position of power and making Muslims numerically irrelevant. The 78-page report titled 2 Years of Lockdown Human Rights in Jammu and Kashmir, released by an Indian civil society group, Human Rights Forum and Jammu and Kashmir, exposed gross violations in the occupied valley. The politically deprived, isolated and besieged Kashmiris continue to live in anxiety, uncertainty and fear, and silence of international community has further emboldened tyrant Indian regime.
And we discuss that and much more concerning Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the Indian hegemonic designs. We've been joined by Altaf Hussain Sahab. He's a Kashmiri leader. Altaf Sahab, thank you very much to have joined us and to have given us the time to have come in the studios despite the heavy rain. Let's begin with this delimitation plan by the Indian government. What is exactly this delimitation? A lot of people are anxious to understand what this is about and how is that going to change the demography of Indian illegally Jammu and Kashmir?
Thank you, Omar. Actually, what India did on August 5th, 2019 by abrogating Article 370 and 35A of Indian Constitution, then having a lot of Indian laws enacted in Kashmir, changing the state subject law and many other laws, which in turn give the Indians the power to buy land, to seek jobs and to purchase property in occupied Jammu and Kashmir, which was not firstly there. And that was the Indian design to change the demography of Kashmir from a Muslim majority to a Hindu majority, because already they have given hundreds and thousands of domiciles to the non-state subjects. And by amending lots of laws, by granting the Indian forces the authority to declare any place as strategic and take over that land. Already they have taken 340,000 lakh canals of land was already under the illegal occupation of the Indian army. Now they have further taken till date 1,034 canals of land in Sonmarg and Gulmarg for a strategic location. So they can take any land, they can take anything, but they have not to get any permission from any local authority now. Now coming to the delimitation, this is the last thing which they wanted to do, and this was on their agenda right from the first day. On one hand, they wanted to change the demography, to change the numbers of the population. On the other hand, they wanted to change the number of the electors in the so-called legislative assembly in Kashmir. Now what they have done, what they have proposed in actually before this, as Kashmir has more population than the Jammu region. It has more population than Jammu region, and it was because that Kashmir had 46 seats in the assembly segment, while as the Jammu had 37 seats in the assembly segment. But what they have done now, actually the Indian Parliament and as well as the so-called State Legislative Assembly, then State Legislative Assembly, has already decided that this limitation will be done in 2026. Till that date, it was capped that there will be no delimitation of segments. In all the India, they will have the delimitation in 2006. So it was said that it will be done at that day in
2026. Yeah, that means about 4 years from now.
4 years from now. But what the BJP's design, the Hindu extremist design, was always that they wanted a Hindu chief minister in Kashmir.
Of course, they have always wanted
them. They wanted to give more power to the people. In a way, it is return of Dogra rule in Kashmir. Now they have given 6 seats to the Jammu region and proposed 1 seat for the Kashmir Valley. So that makes it 6, 44 and 47 now. Though it looks that still the numbers of Kashmiri is high in this assembly, but people forget that they have increased the seats for social scheduled tribe and scheduled caste people. They have increased those seats from 9 to 16. So there will be increase of 9 seats more in the assembly from scheduled caste and scheduled tribes.
Is it durable? Is this delimitation, Wani Sahab, durable, politically or administratively?
See, what is durable, what is not durable, what Indian government is doing at present times, what we have seen after failing to curb the people's resistance against the occupation through military might, through all the means they were doing, they enacted two legislative measures. Some legislative warfare they have enacted in Kashmir by these means, though these are all illegal. They don't have any authority to do this. But might is right, they are doing it of their own. Violation of the UN Security Council resolutions of Kashmir and violation of even of their own constitution, they are doing this. So by increasing this number of seats in the assembly segment in the Jammu and by giving more seats to scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Now, you see, only that if they will declare a seat in Kashmir Valley, this is a scheduled tribe or a scheduled caste seat. So only scheduled tribe and scheduled caste can
of course
contest election there. So in Kashmir Valley, you don't have any scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in that perspective. No seat was reserved for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in the Kashmir Valley.
So that has been deliberately created to make the Muslims a minority,
to
basically.
make the Muslim minority, or to handpick the people of their own choice to contest election in those places and make the number of their own choice in the assembly in order to install their own regime. Already the regimes which were there, they were their own, but now they directly want to install the Hindu chief minister in Kashmir, and thereby disenfranchising and disempowering the Muslims of the state of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This is the main motive of this delimitation, along with all what they have done so far, enacting those laws, amending nearly 800 state laws and enacting 200 Indian laws in Kashmir. So above and all, now they are doing this delimitation, and to serve their own purpose in order to cement their policy of settler colonialism in Kashmir.
But Wani Sahab, seeing all of this, you talked about the hundreds of laws that have been introduced or amended in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir to favor the BJP government, to favor the Muslim majority in other parts of India, in order to make the Muslim majority in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir into a minority. The world listens, but the world turns a deaf ear. Despite all the human rights abuses, including this, the last, step, nail in the coffin, as we can put it maybe, or one of the last nails, that is delimitation. Why is there no hue and cry from any human rights organization or any Western power as far as this is concerned? Had this happened in any other country, maybe in Asia or Africa, the reaction would have been quite different.
So, Omar, to be honest enough, as far as the human rights organizations are concerned, or think tanks worldwide are concerned, they have documented this, they have reported on this, they are very critical of the government of India on this issue, on what they have done from August 5th onwards in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the ongoing human rights violation in Kashmir, and the ongoing atrocities in Kashmir, the lawfare which India has enacted in Kashmir by disempowering the people of Kashmir. And that's what the human rights organization can do. They can only report.
They have certain limits
themselves.
They
have certain limitations. They don't have any army to put in place, or for that matter, even the UN doesn't have that army to put in place. You have the 2 United Nations reports, and on this issue also the UN Secretary General's spokesperson, and also the UN Human Rights Commission, and also we have several communications from the special rapporteurs of the Office of the High Commissioner to the Indian government to refrain from enacting such laws. These are in contravention to the international laws. These are contrary to the Indian domestic laws, so they should not be there. But unfortunately, what we see, the world powers, because all these powers are manipulated by the world politics is manipulated by the Security Council or the highest offices of this. And I think one misconception which has been in the international arena for a long time, that sometimes India has says that it's a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan, and when it talks to Pakistan, it says an internal issue, it's our domestic issue. But one must remind to the international community that Kashmir was never a bilateral issue, neither it was a domestic issue of India. If it had been, there have not been the 18 resolutions from the UN Security Council. It would not have been on the agenda of the United Nations Security Council. If it had been a domestic issue, United Nations Security Council would have not met 3 times after the abrogation of Article 370. But what comes in the way, I know, its might is right. People, unfortunately, all the countries around the globe, nation state subject, and they say wherever they have more economic interests and all that, but they forget at the same time the countries around us and at the international level, they forget that Kashmir is such a central place, such a place. If we don't resolve this issue, they cannot achieve the goals of peace and progress in this region and around the globe. I think what Pakistan has recently said, we are going geoeconomic, what will be our interests. So how can they be fulfilled? They can only be fulfilled if Kashmir is resolved. Only then we can have a peaceful atmosphere. Only then the Central Asian states can benefit from the cost, from the what they can achieve by trading with India, with Pakistan and other places. And likewise, the United States or other big Western powers, if they have any trade relations with India and other places, if that is not secure, how can they reap the profits? So I think they have to realize that unless and until Kashmir is all, because Kashmiris are not giving in. Kashmiris have paid a huge price for this right, and they are paying that price. And India, after using all these repressive laws, all these military might, all its economic might, all its foreign clout, whatever it has, but it has failed to subjugate the Kashmiris' will. Even today, when we are talking, we heard the news that 3 of the Kashmiris were martyred even today. So siege and search operations, detention of Kashmiri leaders and human rights activists, discrediting them. This is all what India is doing. But
on a daily basis.
But the people of Kashmir on the ground, they have decided, come what may, whatever cost we have to pay, we will keep on struggling against this occupation. So I think if the international community will not pay its due attention to this dispute, it can flare up, because previously we were talking about that is an issue between 2 nuclear powers. Now a third nuclear power is also an active actor in this dispute. That was an actor, but that was a passive actor then. But now that's an active actor in the dispute. So, and along with that, the international community, I think, must realize the way the Indian government is behaving with its own population, the way they are now straight away, this government has become, all those actions which the Hindu radicals take, or all those talks, what they do, their leaders do, this is government condoned, this is state condoned. So state of India is no more now a secular state, it has become
I think it can't even be called a democracy.
It is not a democracy, it's a fascist state now, they're all fascists now. So the repercussions of this fascism of the India, because India is a huge population, when this things will turn ugly in the Indian state, it will have huge repercussions
within India,
within around the globe and in the neighboring countries.
Of course. You talked about cost, Wani Saab. The cost has been the lives of hundreds of thousands of Kashmiris, so many scores of women raped, and children who've been orphaned. I was looking at a report on the cost of conflict as far as the orphans are concerned. Way back in 2014, there was a report made by Save the Children that talked about the deaths in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir due to conflict is around 214,000. 15% of them living in orphanage is around the region. Then another report that was made later by sociologist Bashir Ahmed Dabla, who is from Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. He said 48% of the orphan children face economic hurdles. Nobody is doing anything about it, not the Indian government. And what can the human rights organizations, how much can they do about it when it happens on a very daily basis?
You see, but subject asked a very pertinent question, because when we see about the orphans or the people who died because of the conflict in Indian occupied Kashmir, you have socio-economic trauma all over Kashmir. Every 46% of the population in men and 56% population in women is under psychological trauma in Kashmir. This is the latest survey in Kashmir. Of talking about the children, the victims of this conflict, I think it was responsibility of the international organizations, it was responsibility of UNICEF to take note of this, it was responsibility of ICRC to take note of it. Unfortunately, Government of India has given a very limited access or no access to ICRC. It was very limited access to ICRC. Firstly, it was limited access, then it was restricted, and again it was restored, but it was a limited access. And similarly, UNICEF has no footprint in the Indian occupied Kashmir, because India doesn't want to involve any of the international organizations in this. And similarly, when it comes to there was a commission, Child Rights Commission in Kashmir, or for that, or Women Rights Commission, all those commissions, even Human Rights Commission, those commissions, though they were under the surveillance of the government, but after 5th of August, those all commissions were abolished. So there is no recourse for the people. Now we have seen recently very horrible news in the social media and also in the electronic and print media in Indian occupied Kashmir, in India and all that, that Kashmiri orphans are on sale. So Kashmiri orphan children are on sale, because now the people have no recourse to justice. They have no other means. Now the people, the fraudulent people from the India and other places come over there, and these are taken as slaves. It's a modern form of slavery is taking place in occupied Kashmir. This is all by design by the Indian government to make people economically so much powerless that they could give up their resistance for the freedom.
Not only is India making the people within Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir powerless, it's also making organizations that could talk about it powerless, including, let's talk about SARC. Wani Saab, the spokesperson of the Foreign Office today, while talking to media, he said that India was in fact behind the obstruction of the SARC process, and that was an established fact. Pakistan wanted to have a SARC summit way back, a couple of years back. It cannot, and it still is said Pakistan is ready to host the next SARC summit as soon as these artificial obstacles are removed. India is trying all it can in order to not only destabilize the Muslim population within its own country, but also those other countries that might have a certain power of or some kind of a say as far as these illegal issues that are pertaining within India is concerned.
This, you see, India has trying to become a hegemon in the region in order to make it.
It has tried. I think it has become.
It has become in a way that it wants to influence the Bangladesh, it wants to influence Nepal, Maldives. And you see in Maldives now you have Leave India protests in Maldives because of these current day processes and practices which India is carrying out, the same processes in Bangladesh and all that. It's true, it's not, we must not mix our words. India has been the obstruction in the development of SARC from the day one. Kashmir is not an issue which came into light after the SARC came. This issue was there, it is there, it is an international issue, it has been recognized by the UN Security Council, it has resolutions on it. So it should not become a hurdle in that, because Pakistan has a right and has always been talking about the rights of people of Kashmir, the atrocities that are being committed in occupied Kashmir, in order to make India know that peace between the two big neighbors in this region can only be achieved through the resolution of Kashmir. If Kashmir is not resolved, there cannot be an cordial relations or a peace between India and Pakistan.
I agree with that.
So that is what Pakistan has been trying, and Pakistan has been involving other nations also in this. Pakistan has always said, if anybody is ready to come to negotiate, we are ready for that. Pakistan was ready to hold in 2016. Even Pakistan is ready today to, as a spokesperson said, but it is Indian intransigence, it is Indian obstruction which has caused a SARC, and not only loss to these two nations, but to this whole region, because it was told that this century will be the century of Asia. So this is how India has done.
Let's see, Wani Saab, how things move around and in which direction they move around. As far as we are concerned in Pakistan, we are trying on all the different fora to propagate all the words or the rights of the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. All they want is the right to self-determination, the right to decide what they want to do with the region. Give them their right, and then we will agree with whatever they decide to do. Thank you very much, Altaf Hussain Wani Saab, Kashmiri leader, to have joined us, to have talked to us about the different aspects of the developments as far as India is concerned and the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. I'll end, ladies and gentlemen, with this little quote by the spokesperson that was taken today, and he said India must recognize the reality of the just, legitimate and indigenous Kashmiri struggle, respect the wishes of the Kashmiri people and grant them their inalienable right to self-determination in accordance with the UN Charter and the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions. Let's hope this happens. We can only hope. Pakistan is doing all the efforts possible in that direction. In our second story, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be talking about Iran and the JCPOA. The 8th round of these meetings are happening, and the Iranian foreign minister in a recent interview has said that the agreement could be reached if all sanctions were lifted. More in the following report.
Salvaging the tattered Iran nuclear deal remains one of the most debilitating challenges owing to prevalence of outstanding frictions between Iran and world powers. The 8th round of Vienna talks, which is underway in Vienna, is sparking cautious optimism as various rounds of bilateral and trilateral meetings between the relevant delegations exhibited significant progress towards diplomatic solution. Since Vienna talks bestowed a suitable framework to take the talks forward, Iran's foreign minister hoped that an agreement can be reached with world powers in exchange of suitable guarantees. The landmark 2015 nuclear accord struck between Iran and a group of world powers known as PF5+1, the US, UK, France, China, Russia and Germany provided an amicable roadmap to resolve Iran's nuclear crisis. Under the agreement, Iran agreed to extraordinary and robust monitoring, verification and inspection in return for sanctions relief, whereby then US President Barack Obama's administration expressed confidence in the outcome of the accord. However, in May 2018, then US President Donald Trump unilaterally abandoned the agreement and termed it defective at its core, while reinstating crippling economic sanctions on Iran as part of a maximum pressure strategy to compel the country to negotiate a replacement. It is pertinent to mention here that multilateral talks to salvage the landmark 2015 accord and bring Iran back into compliance began in May 2021 after Joe Biden ascended to US presidency, and Vienna talks are underway to iron out all outstanding differences between relevant parties. Moreover, in its bid to pave the way for operational access to satellite system launch technology, Iran launched a satellite carrier rocket in space, an effort which was termed regrettable by world powers.
Now, the JCPOA is an extremely important agreement that was made between Iran and the P5+1 way back in the year 2015. And then, of course, came Donald Trump, and he said that the US no longer wanted to be part of it. Now, when the US withdrew, of course, came the sanctions that the US put on Iran, and then the JCPOA kind of lost its value. Now, since Joe Biden came into power, even before he came into power, this was one of his major words that he would want to this nuclear deal, the JCPOA, to be reinstated in a letter and spirit. And this is what the US also has been trying on its end. There have been different rounds of talks between the different countries. The US is also participating indirectly as we speak, but the other countries are there. With Iran, there have been different rounds of talks. There have been certain thorny points between both sides that are trying to be that both sides are trying to come to, in fact, a middle ground in order to for this JCPOA to come to some kind of a logical conclusion. Now, the Iranian foreign minister says in a recent interview that he's quite optimistic of the future of the nuclear deal, but he said this can only happen if all the sanctions that have been put by the United States are unilaterally withdrawn. We've been joined by Dr. Adil Sultan, who is the Dean Faculty of Aerospace and Strategic Engineering at the Air University. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, to have joined us. Dr. Saab, what do you feel about this level of optimism that has been shown by the Iranian foreign minister? This is not the first time that Iran has shown optimism as far as the future of the JCPOA is concerned. Should we be optimistic?
Yes, there is a reason to be optimistic because both sides have interest to reach to a final conclusion. And the Iranian side, now the documents that they have shared or the proposals that they have given, some term it as a maximalist position, but it also indicates the real intent or genuine intent from the Iranian side to reach to a logical conclusion. And likewise, from the United States and other partners or the participants of these discussions. I think both sides have interest, and there is some optimism, but it is with caveats. There are certain issues that can again impede this process, and we can see the same situation as we were before.
When you talk of issues, Dr. Saab, that can impede the process, the recent satellite that has been launched by Iran has also drawn a lot of criticism. Do you feel this could be some kind of an impediment as far as these talks are concerned?
I don't see it. This could be part of signaling from the Iranian side that they have the capability, and they have been doing it before also. But I don't think so it is going to affect the outcome of the discussion. If there is a serious progress on the talks, so these signals could be just to strengthen Iranian position, but I don't see this affecting the outcome of the dialogue.
All right. Now, as far as Joe Biden is concerned, there have been certain question marks from the US side. And the US side basically is not interested in lifting all of the sanctions that it has put on Iran. On the other hand, the Iranian side, as also has been enunciated by the Iranian foreign minister in this interview given very recently, has said that this could happen only and if the US sanctions, in fact, the sanctions by the US are completely withdrawn. Is there no middle ground, Dr. Saab?
Second last part, please.
I was saying that the Iranian foreign minister says that the future of the JCPOA lies in the US withdrawing its sanctions completely as far as Iran is concerned. Do you feel there could be a middle ground? I mean, could both the countries come to some kind of a middle ground?
Absolutely. That's what is likely to be the scenario. Both sides are taking strong positions. The US is not participating in the discussions directly, and they are using the interlocutors indirectly engaging with Iranians. So it is natural for both sides to take maximalist position. But since this is the 8th round, this also indicates that there is an intent from both sides, and there is going to be a middle ground. But the point that you refer to about the US lifting all the sanctions, all sides know that without an agreement, it is going to be problematic in restraining Iran what it wants to do. But United States or Joe Biden is also in a difficult position. He doesn't want to be seen as a weak president negotiating the Iran deal or renegotiating Iran deal from a position of weakness. So they are putting their conditions, and likewise Iranians, they are putting their conditions. But this whole dialogue also has some linkages with the NPT review conference that was supposed to happen in January, but it has been postponed because that was one forum where the major powers had always come under criticism by countries like Iran, which is part of the NPT, because they had been accusing the major powers, the P5 countries, the nuclear weapon states, NPT recognized nuclear weapon states, for not honoring their part of the commitment. So once this dialogue had started, in June, probably that was also one of the interests from the major powers to demonstrate that they are sincerely engaging in resolving nuclear-related issues, including the JCPOA. And that was also an opportunity, that would have been an opportunity for Iran also if NPT review conference had held to target or criticize the United States. But since NPT review conference has been postponed, we have heard that probably indefinitely, there is a concern. Because of this postponement, these talks may again go to a stalemate because that incentive on both sides is lacking now.
All right, you talk of a stalemate, and you said that the incentive lacks from both sides. What if there is these talks are inconclusive, even this 8th round is inconclusive? What happens next? What is the fate of Iran in your point of view?
In the end, as I said earlier, renegotiating the deal or implementing the JCPOA are the only two options. And
but Dr. Saab, I'll come back to what the Iranian foreign minister said in the interview. I'll quote him, and he said, "We also demand guarantees that include not imposing any new sanctions and not reimposing sanctions after lifting them under any pretext." Do you feel that the countries that are involved in the negotiations would agree with it?
Those countries might agree to this, but we are talking about the main that United States, probably United States is not in a position to give that kind of blanket approval to such an agreement where they can guarantee that the sanction will not be reimposed on Iran if Iran, whatever it wants to do. So as you stated also, there is going to be some middle ground negotiations from both sides, and the interlocutors or the middle powers or the countries that are negotiating, Russia, China, France, UK, and Germany, probably they are going to facilitate these talks to reach to some common understanding.
All right, Dr. Saab, do you also feel that if these talks in the 8th round fail, there will be a 9th and the 10th and 11th, and these talks will continue till such time that some kind of an agreement is reached?
That is that cannot be stated definitively, because both sides have to demonstrate to their local public or the domestic audience also what they are doing. From the United States, there is a very strong lobby within the United States and some of the United States allies also. They are pushing or pressurizing Biden administration to discontinue these talks. So it won't be possible for the Biden administration to continue engaging with Iran indefinitely. There is probably they have a timeline. And likewise on the Iranian side, there is an incentive for the new administration, the Iranian president and the new interlocutors from the Iranian side to show some progress, to show to their public that they have achieved what the previous administration could not achieve. But they can continue with these talks with no conclusive outcome. So they have to reach to a conclusion. So I don't think so. It is, and neither the rest of the countries have much patience to remain engaged indefinitely without reaching to a conclusion.
All right, there's another thing that the Iranian Foreign Minister cited during the interview, and I'd like your point of view on it. He said what he would desire is that Iran exports oil and obtains revenues through the country's own banking system. Now, the sanctions are such that Iran cannot do that. Do you feel this could happen as well?
I don't think so. We should be expecting this kind of concession immediately. But in the longer term, of course, this is what Iran would want. But I would just remind you that under the JCPOA, after 8 years, there was a transition time, and after 10 years, there was a termination time once the Iran case file was supposed to be closed. By raising these demands, what Iranians probably are doing is they are advancing that transition time, which was supposed to happen in 2023. Probably they are advancing by 2 years in 2021. They might in the end succeed and gain more concessions, but I don't think so. They will get this kind of concession or to export oil at the free will and allow all the banking systems. It is going to take some time.
All right. Iran's geopolitical and geostrategic situation is quite important in the whole current context of what the world is going through. In either case, whether these talks succeed or not, do you feel Iran's role in this region will continue to be as important as it has been?
Yes, Iran is an important country in this region with significant influence in the regional affairs, and we have all seen that. But we also have to see that there's also fatigue also, because these things are happening and we are in a state of COVID where economies are going down.
There seems to be some kind of a technical lag. Nevertheless, what Dr. Saab was saying, Dr. Adil Sultan, is that, of course, these talks will continue, but he does not know whether there will be another round or other rounds of talks as well. But he said that there was a time limit to all of that, and Iran is trying to extend the transition period from 2021 to 2023. Now, he also says that as far as the concessions that are being requested or demanded by Iran could not be complied in its entirety, there is a possibility there's some kind of a middle ground. That was Dr. Adil Sultan, a Dean Faculty of Aerospace and Strategic Engineering at the Air University, talking to us about the 8th round of the JCPOA, the talks between Iran and the P5. Of course, the US is also participating in it indirectly. Nevertheless, there are certain question marks from both the sides, from the US as well as from Iran, and what needs to be done and what we hope will be done is is some kind of middle ground will be achieved in the days to come, and the JCPOA will inshallah be reinstated in one form or the other. Let's come to our last two stories, ladies and gentlemen, very quickly. First of all, let's go to Kazakhstan. We know that Kazakhstan is going through a certain turmoil. What happened and what is Kazakhstan? It shares its borders with Russia, with China in the east. It is a huge country the size of Western Europe. It has vast mineral resources, 3% of the global oil reserves and important coal and gas sectors, mainly Muslim Republic, large Russian minority, of course, escaped the civil strife also which happened in other parts of Central Asia. What happened is that fuel riots occurred and that rocked the government. It resulted in resignations at the top and a bloody crackdown on the protesters. These protests are still going on. The president, the Kazakh president, said he has given orders to shoot to kill the so-called quote-unquote terrorists. The president, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, on Friday, in fact today, says he had given shoot-to-kill orders to deal with further disturbances from those he called bandits and terrorists, adding that those who failed to surrender would be destroyed. He has also said that the constitutional order has mostly been restored. Nevertheless, dozens have been killed in the worst violence since the independence about 30 years back of Kazakhstan. Russian-led body says peacekeeping force in Kazakhstan is going to be around 2,500. And this is because the Kazakh president asked Russia to bring in troops in order to stabilize what was happening in its country. Police also say they have killed dozens of rioters in Almaty. 18 members of security forces have been killed. And the US also questions the deployment of the Russian-led troops. A whole lot is happening in this region and a whole lot of tugging and power play. Let's hope that stability comes in Kazakhstan. And finally, let's end today's newsroom, in fact, with some good news. The Judicial Commission of Pakistan has approved the nomination of Justice Aisha Malik for her appointment as a Supreme Court judge with a vote of 5 in favor and 4 against. She will be the first female Supreme Court judge in the judicial history of Pakistan. The final approval, of course, regarding the appointment of Justice Malik has been sent to the Parliamentary Committee on Judges. Out of these 17 judges who have been appointed in the Supreme Court, Justice Aisha Malik has been nominated for the seat which became vacant after the retirement of Justice Mushir Alam on the 17th of August last year. Chief Justice of Pakistan, Chief Justice Lahore High Court had in fact suggested the name of Justice Aisha Malik, and to which she had also agreed in writing. We wish her all the best. We wish to see her instated in the Supreme Court of Pakistan. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We bid you farewell and have a great weekend. Nevertheless, follow the SOPs and get yourselves vaccinated. See you all on Monday. Allah Hafiz.